We read from John chapter 4, beginning at verse 4. On his way there, Jesus had to go through Samaria. In Samaria, he came to a town named Sychar, which was not far from the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by the trip, sat down by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw some water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink of water." His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The woman answered, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan, so how can you ask me for a drink?" Jews will not use the same cups and bowls that Samaritans use. Jesus answered, "If you only knew what God gives and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would ask him and he would give you life-giving water." "Sir," the woman said, "you don't have a bucket and the well is deep. Where would you get that life-giving water? It was our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well. He and his children, his flocks, all drank from it. You don't claim to be greater than Jacob, do you?" Jesus answered, "Those who drink this water will get thirsty again, but those who drink from the water that I will give them will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give them will become in them a spring, which will provide them with life-giving water and give them eternal life." "Sir," the woman said, "give me that water. Then I will never be thirsty again, nor will I have to come back to draw water." "Go and call your husband," Jesus told her, "and come back." "I don't have a husband," she answered. Jesus replied, "You are right when you say you don't have a husband. You have been married to 5 men, and the man you live with now is not really your husband. You've told me the truth." "I see you're a prophet, sir," the woman said. "My Samaritan ancestors worshipped God on this mountain, but you Jews say that Jerusalem is the place where we should worship God." Jesus said to her, "Believe me, woman, the time will come when people will not worship the Father either on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans do not really know whom you worship, but we Jews know who we worship, because it is from the Jews that salvation comes. But the time is coming and is already here when, by the power of God's Spirit, people will worship the Father as he really is, offering him the true worship that he wants. God is Spirit, and only by the power of his Spirit can people worship him as he really is." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah will come, and when he comes, he will tell us everything." Jesus answered, "I am he. I am talking with you." May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to preach to you this evening. The first line of my sermon was, "I assure you," written before today, and it is, "How far are you prepared to go to get to church?" I didn't have to come too far to get to tonight's service, and I probably would have walked it anyway, even had the roads and the pavements been clear of snow. Sometimes people are prepared to travel great distances to get to the church of their choice. Back in the 1980s, Michael Baum, he was the rector of All Souls Church in Langham Place in the centre of London. It was then, and it is today, a huge congregation that draws people from all across London and even beyond. Well, when in 1982 he moved to become the Bishop of Chester, it was said that he'd done so that he could live nearer to members of his congregation. How far are you prepared to go to get to church? Now, of course, what happens with the congregation of a London megachurch also happens, albeit on a smaller scale, with churches throughout this country, including here in Billericay. After all, weather conditions permitting, we can take advantage of the fact that we live in the age of the car, and we're no longer tied down to attending the church or the churches that are within walking distance. It might be an interesting exercise to add to that large number of special Sundays that populate the church year, if there's a slot still available, and have a go to your nearest church Sunday. I wonder what might be the outcome. Here in Billericay, some congregations have cunningly housed their clergy right next to the church with this possibility in view. If you belong to the Most Holy Redeemer or to Emmanuel, or if you usually worship at somewhere like Great Bursted, there'd be no change there. If you look at Christ Church, Perry Street, I think you'd get an extra Anglican priest and even a bonus Baptist pastor for the day. Here at Western Road, in addition to having Judith as usual, you'd also get me into the bargain. Though whether that's a good bargain or otherwise, I leave it up to you to decide. Helen Croft might not be there at the Christian Link, but the Robs will be there to help out. Though quite who's going to be at the Rising Sun function room, I'm not so sure. Paul, that's not your nearest church. As for the United Reformed Church, St. John's and Little Bursted, you, as our Methodist friends would put it, will be making local arrangements. And that's just dealing with those who have the label clergy. Church members would, of course, find themselves relocated all over the place in a great and glorious mix-up. I wonder where you would be on Support Your Local Church Sunday. And who might you find yourself worshipping with on that day? And what form might worship take in this new dispensation? It all sounds like great fun to me, but I'm not sure that the idea is going to catch on. Arguments over the correct location for worship surface in this conversation between Jesus and the woman by the well. She, as Samaritan, is very attached to their shrine at Mount Gerizim, while she's aware that Jesus, as a Jew, can only be expected to reject that in favor of the one only true shrine, the Jerusalem temple that sits atop Mount Zion. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say that the place where God must be worshipped is Jerusalem. Although geography appears to be the significant factor, it masks other factors, things that prevent both Jew and Samaritan worshipping as they might or as God intends. Yet there's nothing here in this gospel reading that should make today's Christian churchgoer feel too great a sense of superiority over biblical Jews or Samaritans, or indeed to have any sense of superiority at all. After all, how different in kind are the sort of reasons that we have for going to the church we attend from those that were held by the Jews and the Samaritans of Jesus' day. Now, St. Phil and St. Kirsty, in the company of all the property speculators today, tell us that when it comes to acquiring a property, the three most important factors in determining the price are firstly, location, secondly, location, And thirdly, location. Yeah? But it's not quite that way with Christians trying to find their church. For some of us, it's the specific tradition that matters. We are Anglican, Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Reformed, or even non-denominational through and through. Often, though much less often these days, it really is the denominational label and all that that represents in terms of heritage and outlook, that is the deciding factor. When I came to England to live in London, the year after Michael Baughan had departed for Chester, my first port of call on Sunday was a United Reformed Church congregation, because I understood it to be the first cousin, historically speaking, to the Irish Presbyterians. And if I remember correctly, I walked past both Anglican and Baptist churches in order to get there. Nowadays, though, other factors carry greater weight, and the mixture of denominational origins that we amongst the worshippers and the mixture of denominational backgrounds and origins that we have amongst the congregations in which we worship illustrates this truth. Imagine we've all noticed the phenomenon of church shopping, a practice that comes into play when people move to a new area. And they do move more frequently in a society where increasingly people leave to go to college or change homes in search of a new and a better job. Someone turns up at your church, perhaps for a week or two on a Sunday morning to take part in the worship. If you manage to catch them for a conversation before they manage to escape unscathed and out of the door at the conclusion of the service, they let you know that they're trying out the local churches before choosing the one that is right for them. Now, part of me, the old-fashioned denominational part of me, tolerates rather than recommends this practice. But since we live in an individualistic, consumer-driven society, it makes good sense culturally. And so I accept it. Especially if, in the end, they choose to make their spiritual home at my church. Geography, tradition, and personal preference all have their part to play in deciding how far we are prepared to go, geographically and otherwise, to get to church. But, says Jesus, none of these compare with the importance, with the need, and with the requirement to worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The day is coming, he declares to the woman at the well. Indeed, it is already here, when true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. It's not the position, not even if it's at the center of a village main street or on the edge of a town with good parking, that counts. It's not even the tradition, whatever beauty or vitality or other quality that has to offer. It's not that it draws a certain sort of person. None of these are the essential factor. It is the worship of the Father in spirit and in truth, and that is alive and well in that congregation or in any congregation. That's what really matters. And let's be clear. Just as in their time it wasn't essential to worship at either Mount Gerizim or Mount Zion, no one Christian church, no one single denomination today has a monopoly on worshiping in spirit and in truth. Not even the one to which I belong. In this week of prayer for Christian unity, we're following through a theme that's about walking with God and walking towards freedom. And as has been mentioned, this worship material has come from the churches in India, and it reflects the struggles and the injustices experienced by the Dalit people, those who were previously known as untouchables. And in India, I believe 4 out of 5 Christians come from the Dalit community, which reflects, I suppose, that in the Christian message, in the good news, they have found a message of freedom that speaks profoundly into their life situation. Confronted with a situation like that, like the situation that faced Sarah, some of our arguments over tradition, some of those arguments in our setting begin to look that little bit petty. And part of the gift that we receive tonight that comes to us through this gospel reading that is read through the lenses that take on board the situation of our brothers and our sisters in India is the realization that none of our traditions has a monopoly on worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth as we respond to meeting Jesus. Now, I grant you, working as churches together isn't always a case of wine and roses. Sometimes it is hard work. Sometimes it can be downright tedious. For example, we have to put up with that lot over there who insist on singing hymns that we have never heard of, while on top of that, we can hear them muttering that we are obsessed with singing hymns that they sensibly gave up 3 centuries ago. Okay, 4 centuries ago. Please mentally place yourself in the appropriate group there, according to your hymn preferences. Yet all have things to learn, and all have contributions to make as individuals, within congregations, and as churches of different Christian traditions working together. Sometimes it's the case that others really are in a better position to observe our strengths and weaknesses, just as Jesus, visiting from the outside of that area, could point out some truths to that particular woman concerning her own life. A few years back, to take another example, over there in Ingatstown, in our churches together there, we shared with each other something about our own life and traditions in a series of meetings that we called What It Means to Be. And for each meeting we added on what it means to be Anglican, what it means to be Reformed, what it means to be Pentecostal, and so on. I wanted to call the series I Didn't Get Where I Am Today Without Being Reformed, but that suffered the same fate as many of my ideas in ecumenical matters. In our presentation, we Reformed mentioned, just as a throwaway line, church meeting, a regular gathering open to all church members for discussions and decision-making. Well, now, what for us was a throwaway line was of great interest to folks from the Roman Catholic, Anglican, and Pentecostal traditions. They saw it as a strength. Perhaps we Reformed should listen and learn from that and desist from rolling our eyes and sighing heavily each time we hear that church meeting is coming up this week. There may be, for all I know, also a word there for our church meeting attending Baptist brothers and sisters. So, when answering the question, how far will we go to get to church? Although we recognize geography and tradition and what works for us as individuals, that they all play a part and they make a contribution to a living faith, we must remember that what is central is not location or tradition or taste, but how we respond to Jesus Christ's declaration that what we are about is worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth. And since none of us have a monopoly on Christ or the Father or the Spirit or even on truth, our walk to freedom continues when we're prepared to learn from and to contribute to each other's life in Christ. In this way, our locations, our traditions, our congregational lives and cultures, as long as we're ready to share them with others, play a crucial part in answering Jesus' call to worship the Father in spirit and in truth, and so to know true freedom.